Peace and blessings, family. This is Brother Sharif, live and direct here in PA with the Hour of Power. I have a very special guest tonight, Dr. Vert. I'm going to bring him on right now. While we wait for Dr. Vert to come on, again, this is Brother Sharif with the Hour of Power. Go to Hour of Power, Sharif Hamid on YouTube. Subscribe and share the channel so we can continue to lift the mind, body, and soul of our people. In the name of God, the gracious, the merciful, we give him praise and thanks for his mercy and his goodness to the human family. If all the trees upon the earth were pens to write with, and if all the oceans were ink, and then another 7 oceans to add to its supply, the writing would still not be enough to explain the glory of God, for he's the exalted, all-powerful, all-wise. We confide in no other in our time of need, and we praise no other in our good fortune. He is one. We thank God for the Metu Netter, oracles, scriptures, and writings that came thousands of years before any organized religion from the continent of Africa. We thank God for Moses in the Torah, Jesus in the Gospel, and Muhammad with the Quran. We greet you all, and to my Muslim family, Assalamu alaikum. To my Christian family, praise the Lord. To my Hebrew Israelite family, Shalom. To my Black conscious family, Hotep. And to my people in the streets, what's good to you? So again, this is Brother Sharif with the Hour of Power. And there is our good brother, Dr. Vert. Can you hear me okay,
hey,
brother?
good brother.
All right. Before we bring Dr. Vert on, tonight's title is entitled Preparing the Next Generation to Live and Lead. And I'm going to let our good brother bless us with his wisdom. But as a segue into this topic, for those who know me, know that I used to do counseling and mentoring there in North Carolina. And a good brother of mine just contacted me today. His name is Brother Simran, a wonderful brother who is the owner of a community center there in North Carolina. And look what he shared with me, which goes directly into what our good brother is going to bless us with and go more in depth with. He shared with me the suspension rate for Durham, the city of Durham, where I just moved from, but I'm here in Pennsylvania now. Look at the suspension rate, and then our brother is going to go deeper into this and many other topics. The suspension rate in Durham for the calendar year 2016 and 2017, 1,358 black females were suspended from school in the calendar year 2016-2017, compared to only 43 white females. I'm going to say that again. In 2016-2017, approximately 1,358 black females were suspended, but only 43 white females were suspended. That same year, 3,071 black males were suspended, but only 140 white males were suspended. One more time, 3,071 black males were suspended, but only 140 white males were suspended. Well, that's Durham. That don't got nothing to do with me. Oh, yes, it does, because if you study demographics, we about have the same problems anywhere we go. It's just a matter of the faces changing. So if we was to pull up those numbers in Pennsylvania, it would be about the same. New York, Chicago, wherever. We have the same problems no matter where we go. So I just wanted to share that, and anyone that comes on later, I'll repeat those statistics, which are absolutely just heart-wrenching and alarming. So with no further ado, my good brother, my good friend, Dr. Vert, can you please introduce yourself to the listening audience, brother?
Well, thank you, Brother Sharif. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you fine, brother.
Thank you for inviting me to this forum, to your page to share some information, to participate in this activity. Born, like you know, born and raised here in York, Pennsylvania, where I'm at currently. Um, Went to the city schools uh, all my life. I did spend 2 years at York Vert, 2 years. My mother thought it was important to have some sort of trade, but I ended up going back to York High to graduate. Then went on to Kutztown University to study engineering, actually, but was influenced by Miss Wanda Dorn, who was my guidance counselor at York High, to go into education. So I switched to secondary math education. Did that, student taught in York. Thought I was going to get a job teaching in York, but God had another plan. So I took a job down in PG County, Maryland, taught down there, then went back to Kutztown, got a master's in curriculums, teaching in Allentown, Pennsylvania, majority Hispanic population at Harrison Morton Middle School, and then went on to did that for a few years. Then I wanted to pursue a PhD. Started at Florida International University in Miami, Florida. I wanted to study international ed development because I wanted to see how education system works around the world, particularly in the African and Afro-Caribbean countries. Politics occurred in our department, and then I ended up transferring to the University of Georgia, where I completed my PhD in Foundations of Education with an emphasis on history of education. And my dissertation was about student activism and agency here in York during the 60s, of how the students were involved in making education reform and change in the York City school system. And we just celebrated their 50th anniversary of their student protest back on April the 5th of this year. Got some support from the school district to give the students who were students at that time proclamation for their efforts to make April 5th Black Pride Day. So and then I been teaching at higher level in higher education, Cleveland State for about 5 years, then Shepherd University for about 5 years, then Messiah for 4 years, and then now I'm doing some counseling. I went back to school again to get another degree in counseling. So I've been doing that since I've been back home. This topic of preparing our next generation to live and lead is timely. I thank you for those stats. And it's also timely about the state of America we're seeing now, where we're being the police are being called on African Americans. So kids being sent out is almost a precursor of being the cops being called on them, and some folks unable to handle students or understand. There'll be some cultural differences that could lead one to suspend a kid or send them to the office for some things that might be very trivial. Not to minimize some behavior. It could be questionable, but oftentimes kids are sent to the office for reasons why some teachers can't manage their classes, so they send them out rather quickly. And I spent over 15 years in teacher education, preparing teachers to teach students, and I would see some of the resistance of students when you try to teach them to be more culturally sensitive to the clients that they serve, and some of them aren't as well receiving some of that message. So it's been an interesting experience, and then even today here in York, I've learned about two young people that were killed in the streets, and that sort of leads to, them unable to lead or live with this violence that's occurring not only in York but in communities across the country. But I think it's important that we try to provide opportunities for kids, whether at community centers that you mentioned down in North Carolina. There are, I think, very few community centers and options for children and young kids today. I just took my daughter to basketball practice, so there's the why, but you got to pay for some services. But like the CA here in York, Christus Addicts, was a place where kids could go. Lighthouse Mission, St. Matt's, and other places like that. But I think more kids need to have outlets for them to go to sort of to get off the streets and not involve themselves in some illegal activities that perpetuates a lot of the violence that occurs. It warms my heart to see like a school like Urban Prep in Chicago, where you have 100% of brothers going on to colleges or some sort of form of higher education. And I think that that should be the expectation across the board. They don't necessarily have to go to college, but some sort of trade school or something to further and better themselves, even to be entrepreneurs. But we have to, sort of change the culture to allow these kids to live, because a lot of these kids aren't living, past 20. And we talked, I was watching your show the other day, and you talk about, we're, getting to sort of middle age, and a lot of these kids won't even get, to middle age with all this, this senseless violence that's going on. So,
Dr.
yeah.
Vert, quick, not to interrupt you, brother. Quick question. I got two quick questions for you. Then I'm gonna let you keep rocking on because you're dropping it, brother. You had mentioned something earlier about classroom behavior.
Mm-hmm.
So my first question would be, how impactful do you think it is for especially our youth in the inner city? Because my channel is unapologetically, for Black and Latino people. I mean, I care about all people, but I try to take care of my backyard first. So my question is, how impactful do you think it is for inner city children to have Black males as a teacher? Since you are a Black teacher, that's my first question. And my second question is, what was your take on the 100-man read program last week that they had here in the city? And then I did a little podcast on that about what I mentioned about the lack of participation from Black males.
I think the first part of the question, I think it's important that our students see folks that sort of look like them, not just, janitors in the building or lunch line persons or security personnel, but also someone who has a positions of power, and also, not to say those positions aren't of respect, but when they're the teacher, that means they have sometimes respect in the school or in the community. So I think it's important that that we have teachers that sort of look like them, but also sometimes the teachers can connect culturally with the students. They can have a connection there. But I think a lot of it too with once we had, I guess, post integration, we had other opportunities. So teaching and preaching were no longer the two major vocations that folks went into. So folks had opportunities to go into other areas, and they did that. So we see, if you look at at one point there was like 84% of the teaching population was white female, and not to say white females can't teach our children, but we need to have some diversity amongst our population of in the work and teaching workforce. And there's been programs like Call Me Mister, programs that was, I think, started down in either South Carolina, I believe at Clemson, and some other schools in the South, where they were trying to grow their